Hare Bol. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Bad Paramahansa Purajakaracharya Astotar that Sri Srimad of Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajakaracharya Astotar that Sri Srimad of Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktabinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay. Okay. So, could you leave that door open just about a little bit, Madhavendra? Just leave it open. Oh, there's more. Ravi? Someone behind you too? No. Okay. That's good. Thank you. Sorry about this morning. Oh, you weren't here. Yeah, I had a 4-hour meeting, international meeting starting at 6 a.m., so I'm still discombobulated. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So the title of tonight's talk is Perfection Through Working for Krishna, the Practical Dharma for Everyone. And tonight we are reading from the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. The chapter is entitled Devotional Service, text number 10 on page 519. Abhyase Pyasamartosi Mat Karma Paramo Bhava Abhyase Pyasamartosi Mat Karma Paramo Bhava Maratam Apikarmani Kurvan Siddhim Avapsyasi Maratam Apikarmani Kurvan Siddhim Avapsyasi. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Madhavendra. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Alex. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Glenn. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Prakash. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. Chris. Abhyasepya samartosi madkarma paramo bhava madartamapi karmani vansiddhim avapsyasi. Abhyase, in practice, api, even if, asamartaha, unable, asi, you are, mat karma, my work, paramaha, dedicated to, bhava, become, mat artam, for my sake, api, even, karmani, work, kurvan, performing, siddhim, perfection, avapsyasi, you will achieve. Glenn, a little more on this, is pretty minimal. Translation. If you cannot practice the regulations of bhakti yoga, then just try to work for me, because by working for me you will come to the perfect stage. Purport. One who is not able even to practice the regulative principles of bhakti yoga under the guidance of a spiritual master can still be drawn to this perfectional stage by working for the Supreme Lord. How to do this work has already been explained in the 55th verse of the 11th chapter. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulative principles of bhakti yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and some organization to expand, so the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness. Or he can help with publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one to rise to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, we always should look, as I say, in context. This verse has followed a verse where Krishna says, my dear Arjuna, when of wealth, if you can't fix your mind upon me without deviation and follow the regular principles of Bhakti Yoga, in this way you will develop desire to attain me. So most of us in this room are on that platform, more or less. The perfect platform is to fix the mind always on Krishna without deviation, engage all your intelligence in me, thus you will live in me always without a doubt. Now Krishna has emphasized this point since the beginning of the chapter. You remember Arjuna asked, which is better, the impersonal realization or your devotees? So Krishna says, without doubt, those who completely fix their mind on me, serve me without any selfish motive, have a great and transcendental faith, that's also in there, they are most perfect. But, on the other hand, those who are interested in the avyakta, the unlimited, the akshara, and they are ultimately, and they also work for the benefit of all. He has a whole list there. They can also come to me eventually. But, you remember what he said about that? Klesho adhikara taste sham avyakta sakta chetasam. Avyakta hi gati dukam dehavad biravapyate. Krishna says it's not a very easy process. It's full of all kinds of difficulty, pains, klesha. Not just klesha, but adhikara klesha means great suffering. We can just imagine, we're devotees. From day one, we've been taught to think of the name of Krishna, the form of Krishna, to do so many activities, so much music, so much dancing, so much going on for the senses. Imagine if we had none of that. We still have to try to control the senses and draw it away from Maya, but we don't have the name, the form of Krishna. There's no prasadam, there's no halva. How are we going to possibly do that? But that's what the impersonalists think. They're unfortunate. They don't believe in the ultimate form of Krishna as the absolute truth. They think the ultimate is Brahman. And the thing about Brahman, it's not unreal, but it's undifferentiated. Where we say every day, how many times do we say, Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Desha Tarine? Tarine means to deliver. He's delivering those in the Western lands. Prabhupada wrote this when he was in 22nd Avenue, so he's in the Western lands. But of course all over the world. But that's what it says. Delivering those in the Western lands from Nirvishesha and Shunyavadi. As soon as you hear that word Vadi or Vada, it's his philosophy. So the philosophy of Nirvishesha means no details. No forms, no qualities, no pastimes, no name, no activities. Just pure light. The pure light of consciousness. Brahman. That's what Prabhupada delivered us from. And also, even more scary is Shunyavad. They says there's no light. Ultimately, there's nothing. That's the Shunya means void. That's the ultimate high Buddhism. High Buddhism. They say it's highest, is to try to void everything out and void it. So we've been delivered by that, from that. So Krishna's not very sanguine, hopeful about this impersonal realization. So then he says, on the other hand, remember I told you about this word tu means, those who are simply doing my work, they worship me, giving my all activities unto me, being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, always meditating upon me, again as pure devotees, having fixed their minds upon me, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So just think what he's saying here. The Mayavadis, their ultimate goal is deliverance from the ocean of birth and death. But their process is going to be very, very difficult. And as Prabhupada points out, quoting the Bhagavatam, Kritrena param tadankata patantado nadvita yushmarangreya. A nadvita means they don't worship Krishna's lotus feet. And therefore, even though with great effort, imagine what it's like, sitting alone, somewhere, or just with your compatriots in Benares somewhere, arguing about the subtle meanings of the Vedanta Sutra all the time, trying to withdraw the senses. You can't have some nice prasadam. That's Maya, plain khichdi, if that, no salt, I mean, and then they have the, the tapasvis, they go even farther. If it's hot out, I mean, I've been looking at some of this weather, in Tucson and Phoenix. 118 degrees, 117 degrees. Oh, it's hot out. Oh, hey, let's go outside. Let's build some fires, and sit in the sun, and really burn out, and really, in other words, it's just, it's crazy. So, and even then, the very few that can possibly get up to the Parampadam, which is Brahmabhuta, which is, they're averse to serving Krishna. So what do they do up there? How long can you relish just being free of birth and death? I'm free. Well, what are you going to do? Nothing. I'm just going to be free. It's crazy. So they say, patantyado, they come down, some kind of relationship, something. All right, I'll start a hospital. So that's the impersonalists. So Krishna says, that's the purpose. I deliver them. And I personally deliver them. There's deliverance the Mayavadis are looking after. My devotees get it, plus all the bhakti. So therefore, again, he says, text 8, last verse. Therefore, fix your mind on me, and if you, no, this is text 8, intelligence on me, you'll certainly come to me. But if you can't do that, okay, then you practice abhyasa yogena, bhakti yogena. Practice bhakti yoga, sadhana bhakti, vaidhi bhakti, which is what we're doing, trying to purify our desire. Remember that the whole bhakti process culminates in absolute obsession to serve Krishna, to please Krishna. That's the goal. It's all a question of desire. Our desires are now contaminated because we've been in touch with the modes of nature. And so, to be protected from that, we surrender unto Krishna. Daiviyeshu gunamayi mamaya darataya. And Maya withdraws, and you can tell that when you're becoming less attracted to do all the nonsense, that you may have done before, or maybe you're not attracted anymore. It's just, let me find a nice kirtan, Hare Krishna, So that's the practice Krishna is saying. You will develop your desire for me, you see. So that's sadhana bhakti. And if you can't even do that, Krishna is saying, then just try to work for me. Give some of your hard-earned money to me, or do some service, practical service. What that does, that also purifies your desire. Because when you work hard for some money, then you put your life and soul, then you give it to Krishna, then the desire is going to Krishna then. He's from within the heart, Krishna is purifying. He says, oh, thank you. You've helped my preaching, you've helped my temple, you see. So let me give you some mercy within your heart and give you some more intelligence how to come to me. So that's called karma yoga. We heard about that in the 3rd chapter, 4th chapter. It's perfectly fine. But without, conjunction in the modern age, it's very difficult to maintain that focus just by karma yoga. The temptations are too much. You need good association. You need kirtan. We can all say together. This is a verse everyone should know by now. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama eva kevalam. Kalo nasyeva, nasyeva, nasyeva gatadanyata. It's about the easiest verse you can memorize. But it's a very important verse. Lord Chaitanya, when he was preaching to Prakashananda Saraswati, the Mayavadis, the 7th chapter, it's a wonderful, the history of how these publication of these books is also important. That chapter was published separately as a book before the rest of the CC. It's so important because it's refuting the Mayavadis, and it's all about the Panchatattva, how they broke open the storehouse of love of God and they spread it everywhere, And there's so many purports in there about preaching and chanting. So when Lord Chaitanya's, he played kind of, I don't know what to kind of, it's such a brilliant tactic. He played, very humble. He sat down in a dirty place, the Mayavadis, he sat down where everyone washes their feet. And everyone, meanwhile, I don't know what he said, he turned on the glow, and the Mayavadis are really into that glow, he must be Narayan. They were right, little did they know these really, Om Namo Narayana. So they said, oh, come on, because he was a fellow sannyasi, come and sit with us. He says, okay. So, they said, why are you just emotionally chanting out there? You should be sitting with us because and studying Vedanta. Please tell us, And because you may not know this, but Lord Chaitanya took sannyas in the Mayavad Sampradaya. That's all it was. the Vaishnavas, they would go take Babaji. They would go off to Vrindavan, if you really want to be serious. They wouldn't walk around preaching with the danda and everything. That wasn't done at that time. But Lord Chaitanya, he wanted to do that. He didn't want to sit in Vrindavan, although you remember when he took sannyas, he started from Vrindavan. I don't know if you know the pastime. Anyway, but he was induced to come back to Shantipur, and eventually he went to Jagannath Puri, and then South Indian tour he went preaching. So he's preaching to this Prakashananda and hundreds and hundreds there, thousands of his Prakashananda's disciples, And so Lord Chaitanya takes a very humble position. And he's explaining how, why he's doing what he's doing. So my spiritual master, told me that I wasn't qualified to study Vedanta. He's actually, Nimai Pandit. I mean, he can, but he said, I'm not qualified. Therefore, you just chant Hare Krishna mantra. And he gave me a verse, the verse we just chanted, Hare Nama, Hare Nama. In this age of Kali, there's no other way, no other way, no other way but chanting holy name, chanting holy name, chanting the name. For what? For perfection, if you want to achieve perfection. So therefore I chant and dance. And I think it was there that he said, yeah. And then I didn't know what was, I kept experiencing all these crying and all these things going on. So I went to my spiritual master and I said, am I doing something wrong? I'm falling down, I'm crying. He says, oh, congratulations. Did you want to sit for class? There'll be darshan in 8:15. Yeah, okay. And so he said, I went back to my spiritual master, Ishwarpuri, and I told him what happened. And he congratulated me. And then he chanted a verse that he said was the essence of the whole Bhagavatam. No, that's not it. Oh, I forget the Sanskrit now. But what it says is that those who have accepted the holy name as their most dear possession and are chanting and dancing, then they will sometimes cry and sometimes experience all these symptoms, and they've achieved the perfection. So therefore, I just keep doing that. That's what I've been told to do. And so, and as far as Vedanta goes, I can say a few things if you like. All right, why don't you tell us? Because he had to glow, when you think of Narayana is it. So he started telling them and explaining Vedanta and refuting the Sharirika Bhashya, that's the commentary by Shankaracharya, which is what they're always studying. And once he explained how the ultimate end of Vedanta is bhakti, hence the name, Bhakti Vedanta. See? And after he was through, they said, yeah, you're right, actually. We just, we study the Vishurika Bhashya because that's what we're supposed to do, but we don't really get any juice out of it, So they all became followers of Lord Chaitanya. He converted them all, which is like miraculous. And suddenly, Benares was overflowing with kirtan. So Lord Chaitanya has made it easy. In other words, you can be Jagai Madai, you can be the most corrupt person, but if you are willing to try the process of chanting and dancing and taking prasadam, and all the better if you want to sit for some philosophy, but don't worry about that, that'll come later, Then you can circumvent a lot of this. In other words, it's true that we still are meant to give, the fruits of our activity to Krishna, but that comes naturally ultimately when you love Krishna, when you understand that you're part and parcel of Krishna and his servant, and especially when you get a taste for that. When you find that we just had Jayananda's disappearance day. So he was a genius at engaging people, especially with the whole thing with Ratha Yatra. Ratha Yatra there's a whole part of building the carts, getting ready, and he was great at that. So that takes place out in the parking lot somewhere or something, So people would walk by. This is how Jayapataka Swami became Jayapataka Swami. He was from Canada, and he was visiting San Francisco like everybody was making a pilgrimage to San Francisco. That's where all the hippies were. That's where the summer of love was going on. This is... I went there in '68, drove across country. So he went down there and he's wandering around near the park, and that's right where the temple was. They're building across the street. And so they said, hey, can you help a little bit, to hold this while I screw something in, I said, okay, sure, That was the mood. The summer of love was, everyone's helping, we're all friends, like that. So he's helping now. And so Jayapataka screwed in something. He says, wow, you did that expertly. Can you also do this? And before you know it, he had helped build the carts, And meanwhile, Jayananda's preaching to him the whole time. He became Jayapataka. 50,000 disciples now. More. Yeah, for true. So, yeah. Anyway, so you can see that this little thing, can you help? Can you give? What karma? It doesn't, paramo bhava. Doing some work for Krishna. That can be work that you did to get your money. You give the money, then all that work that you did becomes bhakti. The effort is there. But all direct work. Then you'll attain perfection eventually. So that's what this is all about. Krishna's going, and if you can't do that, then you can even do something else. The next verse tells that. Whatever you do, don't meditate on chapter 16 and try to follow that description. That's the demons. Don't be a selfish, egotistical, isharo ham hambogi, siddho ham balavansuki. Does that ring a bell, Bhakta Bob? That's the mantra for the demons. Krishna's imitating the demons. I am the controller, Isharoham. I am the enjoyer. I'm perfect, powerful, and happy. Isn't that the mood out there? So don't do that, Try to do some work for me. All right, let's look at text number 11. Unless we have any questions. Here or there. Okay. Without Vijay Krishna, all is quiet. Ataitarapi shaktosi kartum madhyogam sarvakarma palatyagam tata kuru yatatmavan. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up the results of your work and try to be self-situated. In other words, just don't be so attached to the things you have, become selfish and egotistical. Purport: it may be that one is unable even to sympathize with the activities of Krishna consciousness because of social, familial, or religious considerations, or because of some other impediments. If one attaches himself directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objections from family members, or so many other difficulties. For one who has such a problem, it is advised that he sacrifice the accumulated result of his activities to some good cause. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. There are many descriptions of sacrifices and special functions for the full moon day, and there is special work in which the result of one's previous actions may be applied. Thus one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that when one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. That is also recommended here, because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually. And in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. Of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any other experience, because Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind. But if there are impediments to accepting Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the results of his actions. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice for one's country, etc., may be accepted so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita 1846, we find it is stated, Yatak Paviti Bhutanam. If one decides to sacrifice for the Supreme Cause, even if he does not know that the Supreme Cause is Krishna, he will come gradually to understand that Krishna is the Supreme Cause by the sacrificial method. Now, one thing Prabhupada doesn't mention here, but that has become, at least in my day or earlier in the history of the Krishna consciousness movement, that was one of the ways in which we sold books. We're feeding so many people, and it was true, and we're social welfare, like that. And so people, part of the reason they would give was because of these welfare activities that we're doing. And they get a book. Now, if they get a book and they start reading, then they're getting the association of the pure devotee, and they're just by the act of reading, you're somewhat submissive, and so they have a really good chance to get purified that way. That's the best way. But the fact is that if people are in a generous mood and they meet a devotee, and then they may be more likely to give for that cause, and so that's all to their best. They're directly giving. So, but the main idea is to avoid that mentality of self-centered selfishness, egotistical, which is there in the 16th chapter, because that becomes, blockage to the heart, and especially when it's so easy to express that mood in grossly sinful activity like meat eating. If you get into too much meat eating, it becomes very difficult to understand the philosophy because there's so much karma and so much cruelty that's involved in that. That's stated. Nivitta tarsha rupagiyamanam bhavavsha datshrota mano biramat ka uttama shloka guna anavada puman vada jedavina pashugna. This is like the second or third verse in the whole 10th canto. This is Pariksit Maharaj speaking to Shukadev. Okay, now please tell me the pastimes of Krishna. It's the beginning of the 10th canto. But he's saying, and he's saying about that vibration, that for those who are free of material desire, nivritta tarshaya, when they chant, Upagiyamanad talks about you, about Shrota Mano Biramat, Uttama Shloka, Guna Anuvadat, words that describe the qualities, pastimes, etc. of Uttama Shloka. Uttama Shloka means what? The best of shlokas. Yeah. Now it's interesting that that's one of Krishna's names, It obviously calls to mind all of the wonderful vibrations we have, in the Bhagavatam, etc. So he's saying that when great devotees who are free of material desire, when they chant your glories, that acts just like the wonderful medicine to cure the disease of birth and death. One of the words that, the Sanskrit is full of all kinds of words that are very compact. The word bhava, which basically just means to become, also means birth, death, old age, and disease. Bhavaushadi. It's in medicine to cure the disease of birth and death. This sound vibration is bhavaushadi, and it's not bitter. Shrotra mano abhiramat. It delights the ears and the mind and the heart. You see, so that puman virajeta. Where is that fool, human being, who was a fool, who would give up hearing that, drinking in that delicious medicine, to cure the disease and take you back to Godhead? Who would that? Vina, no one would do it except the Pashugnats. Pashugna has two meanings. One who is an out-and-out meat eater, Pashugna, the killer of animals, or the killer of one's soul. In other words, someone who's like a Mayavadi, who's killing your bhakti. So it's a fact. I mean, I know back in the day when devotees, when people were joining by dozens, at the time in different temples. In L.A., when Prabhupada was there for like 8 or 9 months, I think it was 8 months in 1970, he was going to stay there. And we even had all the presidents from the rest of the country. By that time, there were many centers in the U.S. They all made pilgrimage there to L.A. to learn, the standard of the morning program. Prabhupada was setting it up at that time. And I remember Dravida Maharaj, I heard him say there were devotees joining every day. Not just one devotee, but devotees joining every day at that time. You can imagine a place where Prabhupada is staying, right, and nice facility. It was fantastic. But what happened was the principle of familiarity breeds contempt. One day Prabhupada saw the picture of his spiritual master on the altar was upside down. There was salt in the charanamrita, and the clincher was that devotees started filtering his mail because they wanted to control what Prabhupada was here, and that was it. He called up a few other, get me out of here, and he went to Japan, and then he eventually went back to India, and that's when he started all this tour in India, doing these pandals with 10,000 people, in Bombay, before there was a temple. They were staying in a night member's home, but Shyama Sundar was a brilliant publicist, They had a big balloon. I think it was a big balloon. Yeah, right? With saying where it was and, Hare Krishna. Thousands were coming to hear Prabhupada after just, giving classes to 50, 60, suddenly thousands. Anyway, it was Krishna's arrangement. So anyway, this is now at least you can do this, you know. But then comes a verse number 12, which he brings it back home to pure devotion, and the rest of the chapter is dedicated to describing pure devotion. You see. All right. So no questions on 11. We'll go to 12.
Hi, Dravida Prabhu. I do have a question. This is Jessica.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Okay, so it says that for people who aren't devotees, who aren't able to do devotional service at all, they can give charity to whoever, and then that's like they're giving up the results of their activities. But if you're in Krishna consciousness, like if you're trying to be a devotee, then you're not supposed to give charity to like any random person, right? So that's just for people who...
Yeah, you've got your best charity, which is something directly related to Krishna, if you want to, you know, give something. Yeah,
okay.
The idea is that this is like a fallback position where Krishna has encouraged you to at least be a decent person, give to some good cause, and that'll you know, keep you in a position where you'll be more receptive to actual pure Krishna consciousness. You know what I'm saying? But if you close your heart, you become very selfish and miserly, then it's very difficult to be receptive or interested. It doesn't compute anymore. Well, what's in it for me? Look at these guys. What are you wearing here? You know, I gotta go get some threads, man. You know, it's a party tonight. I mean, I'm sitting over there. Yeah. I mean, anyone who lives in Pacific Beach, this is not the place where anyone would think was the best place for a brahmachari ashram. 2 blocks from the California beach, you know, Garnett Avenue with all that carousing and everything going on, you know. And now because of all the lockdown there was, people are, you know, trying to make up for lost time. It's crazy, you know. So that mentality of selfish enjoyment and greed is really a disease. It makes it very difficult to be interested in Krishna consciousness. So what this does, text 11, keeps you open and receptive. You know, you're a nice person, and when you meet devotees who are also nice persons, you know, and they're actually giving their lives for the best cause, you know, you'll be more likely to give to them or take a book or come to the temple and like that. That's the whole idea. You're not going to go back to Godhead by just, you know, giving a charity to the Salvation Army, but but like I say, devotees are out there also. You know, we're one of the charities, so that's the idea. Jessica, you understand?
Yes, thank you, Prabhu.
Okay. So we're going to go on. Now this next verse is a little bit mysterious, but we'll read it anyway. Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasad jnanad dhyanam vishishyate dhyanat karma palatyagas tyagat chantiranantaram. If you cannot take to this practice, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. And better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation one can attain peace of mind. Okay, let's see what Prabhupada says to explain this. As mentioned in the previous verses, there are 2 kinds of devotional service. The way of regulative principles and the way of full attachment and love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For those who are actually not able to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, it is better to cultivate knowledge, because by knowledge one can be able to understand his real position. Gradually, knowledge will develop to the point of meditation. By meditation, one can be able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by a gradual process. In the cultivation of knowledge, there are processes which make one understand that one himself is the Supreme, and that sort of meditation is preferred if one is unable to engage in devotional service. If one is not able to meditate in such a way, then there are prescribed duties, as enjoined in the Vedic literature, for the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, which we shall find in the last chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. But in all cases, one should give up the result of fruits of labor. This means to employ the result of karma for some good cause. In summary, to reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the highest goal, there are 2 processes. One process is by gradual development, and the other process is direct. Devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the direct method, and the other method involves renouncing the fruits of one's activities. Then one can come to the stage of knowledge, then to the stage of meditation, then to the stage of understanding the super soul, and then to the stage of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One may take either the step-by-step process or the direct path. The direct process is not possible for everyone, therefore the indirect process is also good. It is, however, to be understood that the indirect process is not recommended for Arjuna because he is already at the stage of loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. It is for others who are not at this stage. For them, the gradual process of renunciation, knowledge, meditation, and realization. Take it out. Take it out. In other words, it is not for others who are not at this. It is for others who are not at this stage. For them, the gradual process of renunciation, knowledge, meditation, and realization of the super soul and Brahman should be followed. But as far as the Bhagavad Gita is concerned, it is the direct method that is stressed. Everyone is advised to take the direct method and surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So, there's a little bit of a contrast that comes up, and the Prabhupada brings this out, and we were actually aware of it, although we may not always be conscious of it. And that is the process that Krishna is giving, and that he's preaching to Arjuna, which culminates in always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, bow down to me, you'll come to me, dear friend, I promise you. Because you're my very dear friend, I'll come. And then perhaps the summary of the whole Bhagavad Gita, Sarva Dharma Parityajya Mame Kam Sharanam Bhaja. Just give up dharma, all dharma, and just surrender unto me. I'll protect you from all your sin-free actions. Do not fear. You'll come to me. You'll come to me. So, Prabhupada points out in other places that Krishna is demanding, that we surrender. And if we don't surrender, then we're going to keep suffering birth and death like that, But Lord Chaitanya doesn't have that prerequisite. He says, no, whoever you are, just chant Hare Krishna, whatever you are. Chant Hare Krishna and dance with us, take prasadam, and listen to a little philosophy, In other words, it's as easy as can possibly be. I mean, look how Prabhupada started this movement. Basically chanting, 3 hours out in the park. And enough people were intrigued that some of them came back to the storefront. And in the storefront, they found the boys, and they were talking to them. And then eventually they took prasad, and then more kirtan. And some of them became interested, and they became more devotees that way. So really, that's the essence of it, is to attract people with the, just think of the Rath Yatra. The Rath Yatra is not just the parade; it's also the sight. What's there? Anyone who's been to the LA Rath Yatra, there's so many things going on. There's some drama going on over here. There's Siddhanta with his memories over here, and there's plenty of prasad booths. There's all kinds of things. Many people, they just wander by. They don't know what's going on. They're curious. It's attractive. And because they take prasadam and they talk to devotees, they hear the chanting, the seed is planted. And they become interested, and especially if they get a book, then they say, well, let me read this, and then boom, So that's really, Krishna's speaking a little bit that way in this chapter. He's trying to, have as wide a net as possible. Anyone who's even a little pious, who's ready to give a little charity, okay, Krishna says I can do that here, so it's authorized, So that right away he's thinking of Krishna. It's not, it's not just my, somehow or other, to give them. But what he's really coming back to, the remainder of the chapter, is describing what pure devotion is, which is how he began the chapter. Who is the best? What's the best way? The impersonalists are those who are dedicated, undoubtedly. Those who are always thinking of me. And so much of it is keyed to meditation, absorption of the mind in Krishna. Everything follows then, by absorbing the mind in Krishna. So here he's saying these other things are very good. One is better than the other, But ultimately, as he says in the remainder of the verses, to be my bhakta and have these qualities that we mentioned here is the ideal. And since those of us who are seriously trying to chant Hare Krishna and be devotees, we don't have to worry about, oh, did I give enough charity today? No, you give, you work for the temple, you do some service. It's 1,000 times better than some, 1,000,000 times better than some mundane charity. You're directly connecting to Krishna, And there's always this understanding, how much time do we really have? These other processes, yes, eventually come to me. Yeah, maybe in a few lifetimes. Well, do we really know what's going to happen in the next lifetime? Are we going to have this kind of facility? Is there going to be air to breathe? Water to drink? I mean, do you realize how much poisons are being pumped out into the oceans and the air? Our bodies are filled with them, So the whole point is, on one side is, to use your reason. Why would we want to prolong the agony and take up meditation or this yoga, that yoga, when we have the process laid out before us, which is actually feasible for us, we're Kali Yugites after all, We don't live very long, we're misguided, unlucky, always disturbed, Let's strike when the iron is hot. When we have the inspiration, we have the, because it's easy to lose it. It's easy to lose it through offenses, through inattention, through a million different things. You can lose that inspiration. And what seemed like clear reality to you is that this is the illusion, this is the dream. Now let me go, and do what's real, the senses. No, you have to. It's like light and day. Where Krishna Surya Sama, Maya Hoy Andhakar. That Krishna is like the bright sunshine, and Maya is like the deep, thick darkness. Wherever the sunshine is there, Maya holds no sway. But if we turn our backs on Krishna and we become slack and we commit offenses, then that's Krishna's sun is not. We're covering our eyes. We're doing deep shades. We're hiding ourselves inside, and then Maya is there to cause us illusion and forgetfulness. And then we go to the other side. It's just like that verse in the 2nd chapter. What is night for the devotees is day for the karmis, vice versa. So again, we can think this is night and that is day, and be lost. So we have to become serious, and the rest of the chapter we can start with 13, 14, and see these qualities we should try to embrace. And see how we're developing them. They're natural qualities of the devotees. Okay, yeah, go ahead.
So in the purport, Prabhupada discusses like if one is by meditation.
Not able to meditate?
Just a minute.
If one is not able to meditate, no.
Yeah, he's meditating him as himself is the supreme, like which make one understand that one himself is the supreme. What does it mean, Prabhu? Like
this is this old Ahangropasana. Have you ever heard of that? Ahangropasana.
Because it feels more like an impersonalist, or like I am God, that kind of
At
vibe.
least you're accepting the concept of God. You may think you're God, and then you meet a devotee and he'll defeat you philosophically, and you say, okay, In other words, it's the whole idea is we've got a certain momentum, a certain idea, and Krishna has all of these tricks kind of to take that. It's like judo, You use your own momentum, and for becoming his devotee. So you're worshiping yourself. So take the same idea of worship and just direct it to Krishna, and you'll find, oh, that's much more nectarian. People like me better. Nobody likes anyone who's worshipping himself, Well, I worship Krishna. He's how popular the devotees are, because they're very kind and very giving, It's constantly like that. Even I remember, I haven't done much book distribution, but the real skilled book distributors would tune into where the person was at. I remember Tripurari, who was like a real avatar of book distribution back in the day, in the 70s, 80s. He was describing how he would be in the airport, and he would be dressed as a ordinary person, He wasn't, and so he would see someone reading a magazine, Vogue or something, Sports Illustrated. He says, "Oh, is that the new one?" So right away, you're on, you've made a connection with the person. They're interested in that. They think you're interested in that. Yeah, that's a new one, And somehow he would eventually get to the point of, well, check this book out, and then they'd buy it. In other words, you take the energy that people have. That's what Krishna's saying here. You're giving, you're already giving. You're giving, so you're a charitable person. You're looking for a good charity. So now let us explain to you why Krishna consciousness is the best charity, And the person will be interested because they're looking for charity. They're giving, So that's what the idea is. You're worshiping something. Okay, you can understand that. Now just try to transfer that worship to Krishna. See how beautiful Krishna is. You can worship Krishna. Basically, the Krishna consciousness movement, or the early days of the movement, or even today, so many people are attracted. When prasadam is really made, with devotion and great skill, it's irresistible. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was a halva addict for like 7 years. I mean, we had a devotee living here. He passed now. His name was Yamaraj. He was the designer of Back to Godhead for like 30, 40 years. Yeah. And he perfected this art of making halva. He would make the Sunday feast halva here. He lived here for a few years back in the early 90s. An old friend. And he would make, strawberry halva, and date halva, this halva and that halva. By that time I was a little, aloof from halva. But people would love it, They would come back for that halva. Just like we know Madhusudan, the legendary Madhusudan who joined in '66. He lives in the community here with his wife. And he's excellent at making sweet rice. He has it down, And usually of course we had to skip a year, hopefully this year. Prabhupada's appearance day is when the best feast comes. All the old devotees come out and cook, And people would just wait for that sweet rice, cool to the right temperature, and everything. So if someone, they may not know much about the philosophy, but wow, I can that feast, I'll come back, And the whole idea is devotees would sit and they would visit with them, and they would, well, I'm just going to, let me hang out and having the music, and before you know it, they're tapping the foot, So the point is, the momentum is there to bring them into the association, even through their senses. Prabhupada was skilled at that, He himself would cook the first feast. You can imagine how attractive those were. Did anyone not come back for the second, the next week after Prabhupada had a feast? So that's what some of this is that, all right, you're charitable, all right, you want to do meditation, like that. Then start meditating, but now try meditating on this. I had a little of that when I was doing yoga. I think I've mentioned before, I met Amala Bhakta. He was known, I think, Shiva Prem Swami at that time, something like that. And, I started doing the yoga. It was attractive, and I started. He taught me the first mantra, Krishna mantra. And some of you may have heard doing it if you've been there for an initiation. Om apavitro pavitro va sova vastam gato piya yaksmane punarikaksham sabhayabhyam surat shuchihi. Does anyone ring a bell? So whether contaminated or pure, apavitro pavitro va. In what condition you are, then remember Pundarikaksha, the lotus-eyed Lord, and then you'll become purified. So I started chanting that. But I was a little bit dry over there in his ashram. It was a lot of yogis, middle-aged ladies, Upper East Side, Manhattan. So I went across town, and that's when it was happening. Young people, hippies, doing. Anyway, eventually I needed a mantra to meditate on. I was trying to Om, but it was really hard, And so I happened to read this booklet that was written about the Hare Krishna mantra in the yoga studio I was studying. It was 25 years since the guru of the guru had started a thing in South Africa, and supposedly was doing Hare Krishna mantra for 25 years straight. Akhanda Kirtan. Maybe in the middle of the night it was a recording playing, but somehow they was doing that, and so it was all this stuff about Hare Krishna. Oh, let me try that mantra. Then I went to the temple afterward. So somehow or other, Krishna will draw you in if you're, trying to be a yogi, trying to be bhakta. Go ahead. He told me recently. He wrote me an email. He joined in 75 or 76. I had joined in 73 and gone to L.A. He joined in L.A. When I saw him in the Prasadam Hall in L.A., I told Danabir at that time, Vanaprastha, I said, he was the head of the Bhaktas, I said, watch out for him. I know him from New York. He's a guru. He's a old yogi. He's trying to steal our bhaktas, you know. So it turned out, no, that he was becoming a bhakta. He joined the ashram. Yeah, and he told me the story that because he had given me some service. They were actually trying to print a Ramayan, but they didn't actually want to translate it. They were actually stealing from an already printed Ramayan. So my job was to cut it off and then paste it into their book, you know. So I was doing that selfless service, they called it, you know, for weeks. And then for one day I didn't come back. You know, I left. I didn't join right away, but I'd stopped. And he wondered, what happened to that Bhakta Tom, you know, that Tom? And finally he found out, I guess a year later, that I joined up Hare Krishna's. So he was curious. You know, by that time he'd become disillusioned with his guru. I think I told this story. So he went across town. We had the 55th Street Temple. And he went across, he heard a lecture by Vidyananda Maharaj, who was like so empowered preacher. And he became convinced, came all the way to L.A. because his family was there, and eventually joined and became Amala Bhakta Swami. And all those recordings, you know. All right, we better get ready for Kirtan. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.